Hello, motherfuckers. Today I start the Barbera del Valles chess tournament, a classic tournament in Barcelona. Today I'm going to comment my first round. I'm going to show another lines about how to play against this variation in the French. I go with the white pieces against Arnaud Camps Sabadia. Okay, first let me introduce a little bit the tournament. Yes, like I told, it's a tournament in Barcelona with 62 or 63, I don't remember players. I start on the 10th of the ranking. And now it's one round per day, 9 rounds, every day at 5 o'clock. And today I start well the tournament. I won the first round, which is important. I think that there are in tournament more or less the same surprise in the first round than in the second, because in the first round the people you need to enter in the tournament, and usually in the first round you play worse than in the rest. So the first round is always so important. I am a FIDE master. I have two norms. So maybe in this tournament I can reach the international master title. Let's see how goes the tournament. So let's start with the game. Okay, I play with white pieces. I open with e4. I watch that my opponent plays usually the French, so I prepare, but not this specific line. Okay, knight c3. I always play knight c3. I think this is the best move. Knight f6, e5, knight d7. In the past, I played g5, bishop g5 in some games, but in the last month I was playing e5. Knight d7, f4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e3. This is the most popular variation. And here I prepare that my opponent plays bishop e7. I was to game with this move, but I review a little bit of everything. So he goes for the endgame. He takes on d4. I don't like so much this move. Okay, I like, but if you play queen b6 here with another main line, or with bishop c5, then this is the another option. I remember this a6. Here I have some move. I was maybe 3 bishop before. But specifically the endgame I think is so pleasant for white. Bishop takes, queen take, and queen b6. There are many games with that. I chose knight b5. I like so much the endgame, and I prefer the endgame with the knight on d4 than trade on b6. But I want to share with us two different ways to play. The first one is queen takes b6. The position is similar than with knight b5, with small changes. And here I have a game between Kasparov and Baryev, but Kasparov didn't play so well, so I didn't want to focus so much in this game. I only want to share with us a little bit. A4, a5, this is normal, but the black breaks the center and Karpov responds so aggressive. Which not the best option, but it's interesting too. Okay, now Kasparov has sacrificed 2 pawns, um, and he take again, but the machine don't like so much her play, so I didn't want to focus too much in the game. He finally won. And the another interesting game that I want to share with us, and this I prefer this game than the other, is keep the queens in the board with queen d2. So interesting. In the times that was playing for Kasparov versus Tima, this is a novelty. Now there are more games with the move, but in the time was so interesting this move. Uh, okay, Tima respond with knight c5. Okay, let's see if queen b2, rook b1, queen e3. And here in the analysis of the game have knight d5 like the best move. Queen takes a2, knight d6. I remember king f8, and here rook d1 was the best. Yes, and this is why it's not take on b2. And Tima respond with knight c5. And here Kasparov castle, bishop d7, and now queen d4 again, because knight d7 is not possible because the bishop is on d7. And of course, Kasparov preferred the queen on d4 than greater than on d2, but he didn't want to trade queens, more playing her aggressive style. And I like so much this idea of Kasparov avoiding the endgame, playing in a more sharper style. And nowadays, queen d2 is a normally employed move. But let's see how continue the game because it was so interesting the playing who Kasparov plays. Sorry, a6, h4, castle, and then very good move, rook h3. I like so much because now the rook is coming to the queen side to attack the long castle. g4 and h5 there are the other interesting moves, but I like so much rook h3. Bishop c6, knight e2, um, giving the all the third rank for the rook. King b8, rook c3. And now, finally, Kasparov changed trade queens, but now he reached a very good um, way of the endgame. This is more advantage than if you enter normally with 95 or with 90 or with queen takes b6. Now we have a great advantage, but Kasparov didn't manage how to convert. Okay, let's analyze a little bit more the endgame, but to see how to play. And here Kasparov plays so bad and team and equal. The g4, g5 idea was bad. He should keep the pawn on g2 and play rook g3. It's better keep the pawn on g2 normally to attack this pawn with the rook instead of advance the g pawn so much. Only when the black king is short castle, sometimes g4, g5 is a good idea. But if not, if the black king is not in g8, you prefer to keep the pawn on g2 and attack the king side pawn with the rooks. Okay, afterwards this another lines. Let's continue with my game. Queen takes queen knight d5. I think this is the most common move. I'm attacking knight d6, so queen takes, and king e7 is the main move. And now h4 obviously. The idea of h4. Okay, let's stop one moment. With this position, there are many games, but the machines prefer white, so let's analyze why. First, the difference between the bishops. The white bishop is so much better than the black bishop. This is the principal difference. The bishop. And this knight in d4 is so important because it's blocking the pawn. And this gives a very bad game for this bishop. For example, if black trade her knight for your bishop, the game the battle between the knight and this bishop is so in favor of for white. And the white plan here usually are 8-4, 8-5. Depends. You play first 8-4, and depends of how black reacts. For example, now we are going to see another games apart of mine. But if black plays only 8-6, you play 8-5, and then you should attack the g7 pawn with the rook. For example, another typical plan is win space with 8-4, 8-5. There. Usually in all the finals and in the majority of the position, one space with the rook pawns are a good idea, but especially in this endgame is so important. This is the way to play. And black have one plan is try to break with f6. Here is a good move. Another typical plan was knight b8, knight c6 to improve a little bit the knight and keep this bishop square on d7. And when this happens, you should move the knight. For example, now we are going to analyze more specific lines. But in general, after knight b8, knight c6, you should retire to f3. Okay, now my opponent played 8-5, but I want to show us a little bit with, for example, f6 was a good move. And here you shouldn't trade it because after it takes f6, it takes f6. Now black have many pawns in the center and you haven't the block on the dark square. So now after f5, this bishop is going to come to the life and this is so bad for black. So you should keep the blockade in the center. Takes knight c5. And now our bishop d3 or h5 are good moves. Like I told, it doesn't matter if black takes the bishop because this bishop is so bad compared with this knight because the central pawns are of the same color than her bishop. Okay, h5, bishop d7, bishop d3. Well, now I'm going to show us, instead of h5, another typical way to play is knight b8. Here, h5, and now, no, h6 or knight b6, the transpose. I'm going to show us some games with his line. My favorite is the game between Inarkiev and Rachmanov. I like so much how Inarkiev play this game. He he shows a clear plan to win so easy this game without effort, more or less. Like h6, rook h3. Mm. All the moves for Inarkiev I don't going to comment because all the moves for Inarkiev are the best of the position. Knight c6, so important knight f3. The trade pieces when you have special advantage. Bishop d7, bishop d3. This is the square for the bishop, and this is the best square for the bishop, d3, and h3 is the square for the rook. The before, king d2, keeping the king to the center. Rook c8, e3, attacking the knight, all the knight where you want to do. Knight takes, and here, important moves, c takes d3. Open the c file to can trade one rook or try to enter, and keeping one more pawn to the center, who always is useful. And the pawn on c2 in the friends normally didn't make so much. So c takes is a good move. And now we have the battle between the knight and the bishop f6, 94, keeping the central square, takes takes. And now the white plan, sorry, is attack the g pawn. Let's see how. 92 is so interesting to only not only attack the e7 pawn, and now the h rook have a new target with the b7 pawn, creating more weakness in the black camp, b5, and now he returned to attack the e7 pawn, now that he created this weakness, and now before, now let's see, the black have many square for the knight, e6, a5, and thanks to the intermezzo rook b4 previously that go to g4. Provoking in b5 and creating this this weakness. Okay, knight f4, rook f3, and now in the current moment he keep playing knight g6, giving the knight but to enter on f7 with the rook. And now this same game is completely winning. The perfect game by Inarchev. Here he demonstrates all the typical plans of the position. First push the h pawn, sorry, push the h pawn, pass with after h6, rook h3, typical move to place with the rook with the third rank and prepare rook g3 attacking the g7 pawn. And after knight c6, typical move knight f3, keeping knights. Then he plays well the bishop, well the king. He improves her pawn structure. And now going to attack the g pawn. First creating a weakness on the black queen side, and then he returned to the king side. Knight f4, knight g6 in the correct time, and a very nice looking. I like so much this game. Another interesting, but not only for the game, but for my analysis of the game, was this game between Bologan and Jurevich. The game was a draw, but I continue analyzing the game, and I was a very good plan to win this type of positions. Okay, let's see that he plays the same. With Gurevich play h6, sorry, knight c6 instead of h6, but it's the same. Knight f3, program applies the same concept, keep pieces over the board where you have spatial advantage. h6, bishop d3, king d2, all the typical moves, f3, rook h3, takes, rook d3. Bologan is playing like in Arkev, more or less, but I prefer the Gurevich game played at the previous black player. Rook g3, now he double rook in the, no, he came with rook h1, rook h4. This the rook's maneuver are so typical. Rook h3, rook g3, and the other rook came to h1, h4, and g4. f3, rook h3, and now the game ending a draw, but with rook h1. But I analyze how should be the plan for white to win the game. Okay, here knight d4 is the best move. In 10 moves ago, we keep this knight to keep pieces in the board, but now the plan is trade knight because if not, there are no way to improve the position. The position has changed because it's more static because black has trade the f pawn by the both f pawns. So now the plan to advance was play knight d4. But let's analyze all the plan. It's so important. I comment the first plan is the first idea is first trade the knights on d4, then c3, and in one moment I should play bishop d6. Similar like the in Archiev game, who he played knight f6 to improve her pawn structure, playing knight takes g6 and having the f7 square for the rooks. If he takes is well, and if not, I'm going to play rook f3, and after rook f3 he takes f3, and then a4 a5, put the pawn on b3, king on d4, the pawn on f4, and in the right moment trade the bishop, rook g6, f5, he takes e6. I say many things, but now let's see with moves. Knight d4. Okay, this is the first part of the plan. I trade knights. Now rook b4 restrains well the black position. c3, good move. Rook bishop d6, and now another part, rook f3. Improve again the pawn structure. Black can't never take on g6 because this helped me so much. Advance the a pawn. And now in the right moment, trade on e8, rook g6, f4, f5, e6, and rook g1. The only move and the best. And this going for. And now king e5 and white is winning. This was a very very interesting plan about how to win this game. And I have another game between Pavel Smirnov and another bad player, but with knight c5 here to see something different. a5, f6, knight f3. So for the moment everything fine. And now I want to see a mistake who, who make Smirnov with g4. The guy told them, you shouldn't move this pawn. It's better to attack with the rooks. With g3, rook h1, rook h4, and rook g4. So I don't like g4, and the machine doesn't like. But he finally won. And now another important moment of the game. Here Smirnov, instead of three rooks, he keep one rook on in the board. Rook takes e8, lost advantage. It's important to have this position in mind of the maintain a rook. And then he breaks on d5 and keep on the game. Okay, afterwards some master game. Let's continue with my game. Finally, okay. Now takes king 7 h4. Let's see if I record. Yes, okay, I'm recording. h4, and here is pawn with h5. So it's not the best move. In some endgames, this move in some variation of the same game, this move are okay. For example, I play the same game, but not this specific position with rook b8 and bishop b2 and some other moves included. And against Marlon Lavilla in Cuba, and he responded 4 with h5, but this time was the correct response. But here is not the best, but the same game now is well for white, so I can criticize so much this move, but I don't like h5, because now I come in with rook h3, and the idea is rook c3, rook c7, and it's so difficult for black to develop the pieces, because for example knight b8, rook c7, and he can play knight c6, and he plays bishop d7, rook c7. It's so difficult for black to develop, and knight c5, rook c3. It's so difficult for black to develop the piece. In knight b6 was the best move, but now a4, bishop d7. I don't remember that, but in my analysis I analyze the move rook h3. I have this like the best move. But a5, b3 I don't like during the game for a5. But this was to a thing like this. But a5 is normal move. All the time in the game, I have the dude is no the question about play rook g3 provoking g6 or not. All the time I was thinking, and finally I decided to DM make that. In the game against Marlon, I play rook g3 provoking g6, but now that I have initiative more than positional play, obviously I have positional advantage, but now my play is active, so I didn't want to provoke g6 because in one moment I can attack a5 with a tempo. I have ideas of f5. He can never play king g7. I finally prefer to keep the pawn on g7. Okay, he retires to c8, who obviously is a mistake. Now here the only move to stay in the game was knight a4. And here my idea was play simply before during the game. But I have in my analysis a game of Sasa Grisuk against Vareyev with his line. He played b3, knight c5 before, knight e4 and bishop d3. The idea is simply take the bishop and keep black with the bad bishop. And now I remember that Grisuk make a draw, but he have option to win the endgame. Now he's winning here. After trade the ball rook, the endgame with the knight against the bishop is completely winning for white. Now knight b5 was the best move. And here knight b5 is the cleanest move to win the game. With first taking this knight, and after the knight is trapped, b5 give up the bishop, but the pawn, sorry, but then knight f4 and is winning. And the game of bishop, instead of knight b5, he plays in d2 e6. But here it's a winning position too. But I don't know why he played h5. Uh, trading pawns, and I don't understand because the G pawn is a clear target and he trades, so I didn't understand. It's a rapid game, but I don't like h5 because this is the drawing move. Um, so okay, so of course knight a4 was the best move. And yes, during the game I was thinking about before. For example, if rook here, the knight on e4 is more or less trapped after rook b3. Um, it's not easy obviously to capture, but the knight is trapped. And I was thinking about here, but before this position is completely winning for white. So the knight a4 don't scare me so much, but obviously it's the best move. Knight c8 is completely losing. And in this moment, I stopped to think because for the moment I didn't use time because the moves are easy. H4 and rook h3, I know everything more or less. The only thing that I think a little bit is if play rook g3 or not. But in this moment, I stop to think because I suppose that I have a huge advantage, and I have the knight on c8 who can jump anywhere. Then the rooks underdeveloped. I have the pawn on a5 who is a great advantage. So I start to think, and I think many ideas. First I think is what black is doing, because if not, rook c3, rook c7 looks good, but the first thing that I think is rook c3. But then I realized that the black plan was king d8 and knight e7. It's a possible black plan. Then I realized that the plan there are not so great, but this is a possible black plan was king d8 and knight e7. So then I looked that I should play so fast. And I was thinking about rook a3. This is my favorite move during all my thinking time because I came with the last piece to the attack. Now I have all the pieces ready, and I didn't see so active move for black. And I realized that her plan with her king d8, 97, um, the king in d8 was bad for the communication of the rooks, and in the lines that we're going to show now, the king was bad placed on the 8. And but I think so much. Apart, I think about a6 closing the game, but I don't like it. I think that I shouldn't close the game. I still with advantage, obviously, but here I have the initiative and I have more developed pieces, so I should play active. And I think about C4 open the game, but I don't really like this way of open the game because now A6, knight A7 are a black idea or rook D8. I didn't see anything clear. And I was thinking so much between rook A3, rook A3 or rook B3. I like so much rook B3 because he's so directly I'm attacking this pawn. B6 I simply take and rook A3 and I think during the game that I'm winning there. So rook B8 was the only problem. Here bishop A6, B6 only move again, takes. And here I was thinking about rook takes, sorry, bishop C8, rook C8, rook A7, B5, and I don't like that. And I think about bishop E2 too. But the move that I missed, that, and if I was this move, I sure that I play rook B3 or rook C3. I completely missed this move in generally in all this type of position after bishop A6 or in all the trades after B takes, A takes, I always miss rook C3. The idea is after king D8 is not possible because bishop takes C8 and win. So I completely miss rook C3. If I was, I should play rook B3. But rook A3 is a good move too, more or less similar than rook B3 because black have no good move. In the game, I expect rook B8, which is the best move, and here I plan to play that. Cool. To play that, I should play this DLD or not, but of course, rook B8 was the best move. But here, B6 and here I have the same move always rook C3. Um, and I was thinking about B6, but uh, here I have rook C3 in my mind. And here I'm winning king D8 and queen bishop A6. Yes, and here I'm completely winning. Um, but he plays king D8. I don't like so much this move because rook HB3 was my idea. And the idea here, if he plays rook B8, now I have bishop B6, takes, and now he should take with the queen because in the another moment, sorry, if I play here rook B3, rook B8, bishop A6, B6, and I take here, he can take with the rook, which is also different that after king D8, he should take with the. For the reason I play rook A3 because I didn't see so useful move for him. And he yes, this is the main line rook B8, bishop A6, B6, takes, and rook A7 is winning. So he played king C7, and now I have check. Now I can with the other rook. Obviously, I prefer the other rook on B3 and I'm keeping the rook on A3 because to avoid B6, but it's not possible everything. And I want a tempo with putting the rook on C3. So here I like so much my solution because he's coming with B6, his knight is leaving. But now I like so much because I sacrifice a pawn for initiative. The machine likes knight C6 too, but in general in the game I don't like this move never. But bishop B6, A6, great move. Takes, and now the idea is not obviously bishop b7 taking back the pawn because now black developed the knight, he tried the rook, and black have less problem than before. Now the idea was rook b7, playing active, and knight b6. And here I stopped to think again because I was thinking between bishop b5 and rook c7 because I think that the both moves are winning, and it's true. Obviously, the both moves are winning, but I'm not sure how to solve. Bishop b5, I calculate this line, but this is winning, for example. I don't know how blacks can play here. I thought that the d7 bishop was a bad bishop, but he defends many squares. He defends the c6 square, he defends the 7 rank, he defends the b5 square. So always is important to eliminate your opponent's best defensive piece to enter and to can attack. Doesn't matter if this is a bad bishop or this is a good bishop. It's simply the best defensive piece, and you should try to enter in the position. Yes, and I calculate bishop b5, rook c8, takes, rook a3. Yeah, it was that, for example. And I was calculating this line, sorry. But finally, I prefer to play rook c7 because I think now I'm threatening bishop b5. That was my idea. And I was that after, for example, he can play rook e8 because this is checkmate. Or rook s7. My idea was bishop b5 simply. I can take on e7, but my idea was bishop b5. And I calculate rook c8. This is what happened in the game. Rook c8, rook takes. He take with the knight. If he take with the bishop, simply check, and rook a7. He take with the knight, and now bishop b5. The machine don't like so much, but I think this is a winning move. I like bishop b5, eliminating the last defender. Knight b3 with the idea of knight c5 was interesting too. I think that about that too in the game. The bishop b5 and bishop takes, knight takes, rook a8. Now instead of taking the f7 pawn or the a7 pawn, no, I play knight d4. Why? Because sorry, first analyze a little bit a6. The machine say that I can play knight d6 and enter in the same game, and say that in the same game is win. I believe that, but in the game my plan was knight d4, keeping knights and I'm winning. So rook e8. Now her idea was rook e7, trading rooks and avoiding some danger. So I said no, you can trade. And now I'm winning. I threatening segment on c6. He can move the rook to e7, and he only can play knight e7 or knight b6. Knight b6, I simply can take all the pawn, rook f7 or rook a7, doesn't matter. And knight a7, but here I'm completely winning, rook takes a7, king c8. And now a quiet move, king d2. And white, black is more or less in one because he can move the rook because the knight is hanging. If he moves the knight, the f7 pawn is hanging. If he plays king b8, I have this trick. Rook takes b7 and rook takes knight c6. And for example, if he plays knight f5, takes and queen f7. And if he plays f6, g6, sorry, my idea was king g3, keeping the king to the center. And now in one moment he should move the knight, and then I simply can take, and now the king's endgame are win. I expect in the game f6. I thought that during the game that was her only try, but simply knight takes e6, and I'm winning. So but he tries this knight g6. He has an idea interesting. I take here obviously rook 7, and here I think that I have two pawns up, but after knight f5 is not so easy because this pawn is falling. I have no good square for this knight, then this pawn is falling. Really, I'm completely winning. Here, maybe the easiest move was king d3, king d7, knight d4, knight h4, and g3 was maybe the simplest way. But I want to create art in the g4. Most the move, h takes and h5. My my idea was if I calculate g3, and there is so important to play king e1 instead of king e2 because with king e1 you are winning, but with king e2 you have king d7, and if I make the same with knight takes g7, knight takes h6, knight h5 or knight e6, h7, knight takes f4, and he came just in a time to defend the h8. So here was also important to play king one, but he plays king d7. I take the typical trick. If he takes here a6 and this pawn is queen, he can defend this pawn. It's a so typical trick. But he came with another good trick because now my knight is trapped. Well, I can defend this king 3, f5, f6. And my knight is still in trap, but no, so I'm winning. d4, for example, d4, knight, king f4, a4. Now I can simply play king g3, putting black in 1, but knight f5 is winning too. Knight takes, king takes here, here. And if king g8 f7, and if not, if you play king f7 or king e8, sorry, king f8 or king e8, simply h g h g g. One second. So that's my idea, but for the reason he played g3, and now he told me that knight g4 could be better, and I'm okay with that. So usually, of course, knight g4 was a better try, but here my plan was simply take here king f4, and now it checks and plays well the knight, and now think. I don't know what I could do here to win the game, but a6 or I don't really know. But it's obvious that I'm winning here. That I have a pass pawn in a nice endgame. So plus more pawn. So he played g2, knight g4, and now h6. I think about uh, playing h6. I calculate three moves: 95, knight h6, and king g6. With king g6, I like e6. He takes here e7, and e7, and he can defend it. And if knight f6, e7, and I go on here. Sorry. Now with knight e6, simply king f3, and his knight is trapped. So here he plays king e5, knight e5, and now complete h7, knight h5, king f3, and knight f4. And now the rest is easy. He resigns here. I like so much my game. Yes, I really like all the moves of the game. I stop well to think in the precise moment. In general, I like all my game. This is, uh, this is the first really moment that I stop to think. I miss the idea of rook b3, bishop a6, and then rook c3 again. I miss that idea of the pendulum, like Judith Polgar told in her first book. But okay, the way that I play was enough to win the game. So rook e3, and here I like bishop a6 and rook b7 so much. And I didn't thought about he should take on a5, because if not, I take on c8, taking on b6, and taking on b6 again with a winning endgame. So bishop takes. I like all the game so much. And now the third one here. I like my last trick of g4, h5, and I take d7. I like so much. Part of my game, I share with us the games that I know between master of the games of Kasparov with queen d2, the another game of Kasparov with queen take b6. I really like the game with queen d2. I want to show us faster game queen d2. I like so much this game. This is a bad plan, g4, e5. But for the moment, Kasparov was playing so well. And the another game that my favorite game of this endgame was the Narchev game with knight b8. Sorry, knight b8. Mm, b6. Yeah, the Narchev game, I like so much that game. It's so clean about how to play that. And my analysis of the Bologan game are so instructive too. Not only the game, but my analysis of the game. I like so much to learn how to play this game. So yes, that's my first round of the tournament. Tomorrow I have another game, so tomorrow I'm going to game with a new video with my tomorrow game. So I hope that I still winning and playing good. So see you, motherfuckers. Bye bye.